Aims today for this information session, we have three aims. We want it's all about understanding the Creative Schools programme, consideration by you of how Creative Schools might be relevant in your particular school or in your youth reach centre, and also we want to ensure that you have familiarity with the application process and the Arts Council's online services system, because all applications to the Arts Councils are made through our online services system. So what we're going to cover, well, we're going to concentrate really on the purpose of Creative Schools and the practical supports, and then most importantly, the 2-year cycle. So what do schools get involved with when they're selected to be involved in the project? It's a 2-year cycle. It's really a developmental project. Then we'll also cover the main actors in all of this. So the centrality of youth voice, the children and young people in your schools. Then there's the role of the school itself, and then the role of the creative associate who supports you in your journey. We'll also spend a little bit of time just thinking about the relevance to your own particular school's particular developmental goals and how the programme might be relevant to you in particular. We'll touch on the expected outcomes, and then we want to spend a little bit of time on the application process, because there's a few technical steps that you have to go through when you're making an application to the Arts Council. So you'll be registering with the Arts Council's online services system. You'll be downloading an application form and saving that to your own computer, filling in your form offline, and then when you're happy with it, you'll be logging back on to the online services system and uploading your completed form. So Creative Schools, well, what is it all about? It's a major national programme, and it is an initiative of the Creative Ireland programme to enable the creative potential of every child. It is led by the Arts Council, and we are working in partnership with the Department of Education and also in partnership with the Department of Tourism, Culture, Arts, Gaeltacht, Sport and Media. And all our work here is underpinned by the Arts Council's 10-year strategy, and we have a key policy in that to plan and provide for children and young people. So it's a competitive programme at the moment, and through that we try to make sure that there's a balance of range and quality, and in particular to ensure that there's very good spatial representation throughout the country and all regions, and also that all different types of schools are represented as well. So the objectives of the programme are quite ambitious. They are about supporting schools and youth reach centres to put the arts and creativity at the heart of children's and young people's lives, to support children and young people to develop, to implement and to evaluate arts and creative activity throughout their schools and their youth reach centres, to draw on the range of resources within their schools and their wider community, and through this to develop additional ways of working that reinforce the impact of creativity on children's and young people's learning, on their development and on well-being. And then within all of that, we use the Lundy model as best practice, and schools ensure that children and young people have a central role in this whole process. So how do we go about doing this? Well, it's through this 2-year developmental process that schools get involved in. So we call it a journey. So it's like the Creative Schools guided journey over 2 years to support schools and centres to do 3 main things. The first thing is to explore and express what creativity means to your particular school community. The second thing is to develop a creative school plan that is bespoke to your school or your centre. And then the third thing is to begin creative activity, programs and projects that have been identified by your school community in the process of developing your creative school plan. So to enable all that activity, there's a package of support. So the main support is really getting support from a creative associate, and you have up to 9 days per year support from them. So the school leads their own journey, but they get support from a professional specialist. There's also a grant of €4,000 for activities over the course of the 2 years. So that's fantastic for activities and for things like art, professional artist fees, etc. There's training for your school coordinator. So each school identifies a school coordinator from your teaching staff. and they can get involved in the training. And then there's networking and participation in national initiatives. For example, we have Creative Schools Week coming up in May now, and that's a fantastic opportunity to get involved and to network and to see and exchange practice. So I want to spend a little bit of time on this whole idea of the Creative Schools journey, because I really want you to go away understanding the rhythm of the 2 years. So these three main phases of activity. So again, just to emphasize, each school is very individual and carries out their journey in their own particular way, and all their activities are unique to them. But we have a broad framework to help support the school's work. So phase one of the journey really takes place from the autumn of this year through to spring of next year. And following initial introductions and induction, the main part of this phase is exploration. So there's exploration, experimentation, trying out things, trying out different practices and taster workshops. And then the most important thing is consultation. So usually through creative methods, but really all about talking to your young people and your school staff, your teachers and your community, and listening and collating then all the information that you're getting back from this process. This phase one is also very good for your school community to look at how creative schools can be aligned with and support your school's existing development priorities. So you might have things, major goals or priorities in your particular school that are extremely important to you, and you might be able to explore through this process how creativity may help you deliver on them. You can also look at how the creative schools might be relevant to recovery and to student engagement following lockdown, and also through, as we work our way through the pandemic still. And also it's very good for looking at and talking to teachers about professional development that they might like for when they're working alongside artists and creative practitioners. So all in all, your result from phase one is a shared understanding in your school of what creativity means to your students and to your school community. And the ideal is that that can be integrated and support existing work that you're doing and integrated into day-to-day classroom activity. So phase two then is all about developing your creative school plan. So that phase broadly takes place from the spring of next year through to the autumn of 2022. And that phase gives you time to reflect on all the creative and artistic and other outputs from your exploratory phase. So it could be all the mind maps and drawings and audio and all the different outputs that you'll have from all the consultation that you've had. You continue consultation, and then you'll have some kind of process of decision making, be it consensus or voting or a mixture of all different approaches, and then you'll be drafting the plan. And at the end of phase two, your school will have a unique creativity policy. So that'll be your creative schools plan, and you'll have a vision and aims unique to your school. You'll have a plan summary, and in your plan you'll also have a description of the key activities, projects and so on that your school has decided to carry out in the initial stages of in the inaugural projects of your plan. So phase three then roughly runs from the autumn or the winter of next year through to the summer of 2023, and this is when your school begins to carry out activities that you have chosen to include in your plan. So this is where all schools are really so completely different. All the activities and projects are unique to each school and each youth reach centre. And there's a very wide range of possibilities determined by each school community, including, for example, collaborative projects creating new artistic works, or you might have creative workshops that are part of a long-term whole school innovation, such as using the arts and creative approaches in outdoor learning. Or you might have themed creative projects that are intended to enable cross-curricular work and promote collaboration between teachers or support collaboration between teachers. And of course, you might be instigating new fields of activity in your school that your students have expressed a real interest in. So that could be circus, or it could be aerial arts or traditional arts, or natural heritage, or any number of different areas of practice. So we've seen from schools that have participated so far that even though all these activities are so different, that there are some common characteristics. So for example, the activities can be collaborative and participative. We see a lot of engagement with professional artists and other creative practitioners, either in the locality, the region, or nationally. We see the school building relationships in the community. We see activity that is relevant to the curriculum, or relevant to well-being, or relevant to special development goals of individual schools. There's a continuous nurturing of youth voice through the priority activities, and there's support for improvements or additions in teaching and learning. And also, of course, support for teachers' own individual creativity. And we know, of course, that teachers are very, very creative on a day-to-day basis in all their teaching and their classes and their innovation. And this is, in a way, a chance to reflect that and support that. So then, towards the end of phase 3, as you move towards the summer of 2023, you be gathering feedback from your students on the activity carried out so far, even simple conversations with them, some reflections, and looking at ways for your school to maintain your Creative Schools plan as a living policy that will support creativity in your school, even after you've finished with the scheme. And then finally, you'll be looking at completing your final report and documents for the Arts Council. And then we really recommend also putting the Creative Schools plan on your school's website, because this makes it really visible and continues to draw a positive reinforcement from your community, and it helps you to get the support you need to continue with your creativity in your school. So we have examples of practice, and we have training materials from this year and previous years on our website. So that can be quite interesting to look through as you're preparing your application, just to get a sense of the range of activities that are possible. And I suppose to feel confident that your journey will be different to what you see in the case studies, but hopefully you'll also get a sense of the framework being something that will support your activity. So I just want to briefly look at the key roles. So of course, children and young people are the key actors in all of this, and youth voice is central to Creative Schools. We're all about implementing the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, and also the National Framework for Children and Young People's Participation in Decision Making. So basically, we use the Lundy model in all of this, and through the scheme, we're trying to create opportunities, I suppose, to listen to children and young people, to involve them in decision making when developing policies, plans, and programs. And also, we partner with Hub na nÓg, and they help us with the training in the youth voice area of things. So the second main players in all of this are the creative associates. So it's very exciting, but now we've already got 120 creative associates throughout Ireland now, who are working on this program with us. In the main, they're professional artists of all different disciplines, from musicians and visual artists through to opera singers and traditional dancers and everything. And we also have a smaller number who are professional, full-time practicing teachers who also have a particular artistic or creative practice themselves. So the main things that the creative associate does is it's a support role. So again, just to emphasize, the school is very independent and has a lot of autonomy and develops their own activity and follows the journey themselves. But the creative associate is there as your professional support. They can help you introduce Creative Schools to your school. For example, they can provide introductory Creative Schools workshop for teachers. They can do presentations to your board. They can work with you and help you design introductory creative activities for students to enable them to explore what creativity means to them. So they're great help in that understand phase, or phase 1, where there's a lot of exploration and consultation going on. And then crucially, they support your school as you develop a sustainable Creative Schools plan. And they're all very, very creative individuals themselves, being artists and teachers, and they have lots of creative methods for consultation, and they can offer lots of great advice. And and they're active listeners, and they can feedback what they hear from you and help you with your planning. And they can also, of course, help you connect with artists and other creatives in your communities and nationally, and to build relationships with arts and cultural organisations for your school. So then, what is the role of the school? Well, articulate your school's learning and development goals and consider how arts and creativity learning might support them. The school appoints a school coordinator for creative schools, and the school coordinator is from your teaching staff. The school supports your school coordinator, for example, by establishing a cross-curricular teachers committee and by scheduling updates at staff and board meetings. The school ensures that the voice of children and young people is at the centre of your work as a creative school. You establish and maintain good communications with your creative associate. Your school coordinator participates in training, and then your school liaises with the Arts Council to manage your grant and report on your experience. We also have evaluation partners. We're working with DCU, and they from time to time will contact the school as well in terms of surveys and feedback and so on. So we really recommend that you build creative schools into the school timetable, because this helps integrate it and to make it visible for everybody in the school. Then the other thing the school does is builds awareness. So you build awareness among your school, your students, your teachers, other school staff and school management, parents and guardians. And a good way of doing this, apart from activities and consultation, is also to use your school website and social media, because this helps to mobilize your school community and to generate positive feedback for your students. And we've seen this is really great in terms of students then being able to identify themselves as being creative. So just a few minutes then, just in terms of considering the relevance to your own particular school or centre. And thinking about these questions will really help you write your content for your application form. So the main considerations as you're preparing your application are to consider what your school's rationale is for applying to join the Creative Schools Initiative. Why does your school want to develop arts and creativity learning? How will this relate to teaching and learning in your particular school? And what areas of learning and development in your school would most benefit, do you think, from artistic and creative engagement? And by talking about those questions with your colleagues and thinking about them yourself, you really go a long way to building the text that you want to submit as part of your proposal in the application. So if you do go through the 2-year process with Creative Schools, what are your expected outcomes? Well, for definite, at the end of it all, you'll have a Creative Schools plan, a plan for arts and creativity in your school. You'll have additional pedagogies and techniques. There'll be increased engagement in arts and creative activity, and of course increased visibility for the artistic life and all the creativity that happens in your school anyway. You'll have more links with arts and cultural sectors in your locality and nationally. And you'll have had a chance to identify how arts and creativity is supporting the curriculum and supporting well-being in your school. Great. So that was really a whistle-stop tour to go through what you would be applying for, and to get an idea as to the rhythm and the progress of the 2-year cycle. So I'm going to hand you over to one of my colleagues now to take you through some of the practical steps around making your application.
Thanks, Catherine. So hi, everybody. So what we're going to cover here is just what you need to do. You're decided you're applying for a creative school. So what do I need to do now? So the first thing you need to do is to register with the Arts Council's online services, log into your OLS account, as we call it, Online Services OLS, download the application form, fill in your form offline, and then log back into OLS to upload your application form and submit it. That's it. So what do I need to do now? So registration can take about 5 working days. So we always advise people to register, well, today or as soon as possible, because while it doesn't always take 5 working days, it can do. So the sooner you do it, the better. And just to point out, there's an option to register as an individual or to register as an organisation or a group. So Creative Schools is only open to organisations or groups, so please select that when you're registering. It's really important. And while you're waiting to be registered, the funding guidelines are already published on the Creative Schools website, so please view them there. And we also have a Q&A, which you might find useful to inform your application form as well. So it's definitely a good idea to read that in advance. So online services, where is it? It's on the homepage of artscouncil.ie, just on the very top ribbon, in the middle section. Just click in there, online services. And then you'll see, it'll bring you to a link for a new user sign up. Simply click in there and you'll be issued with an ARN, an artistic reference number, and a temporary password. And this is when you go to actually log in, just fill in your ARN and your password. And it will basically bring you to your homepage, your school's homepage. And you'll see a My Funding tab, and that's where you want to go because you know you're applying for a fund. So click into My Funding, and then the bottom left-hand side, there's a Make an Application tab, and that's the one that you would select. And that will bring you into the 4 different stages of making an application form. And in the first one, you choose the funding program, which is when you click on that little arrow, there's a fund for Creative Schools 2021. So you select that. And that's part 1 of making an application. So you select the 2021 fund, and then that will basically give you access to the application form. So you can basically download that to your own computer and fill it in at your own time, your own leisure, offline. And once you've completed that, you'll then go back into your online service account. So there's 4 stages to make an application, which you've just done. And the second tab is quite simple. You just need to complete the amount requested tab, which is simply €4,000. There's 2 other options, 2 other fields. So you can ignore those and just click save and go on to the next section, which is upload your application form and support materials. So once you're happy with your application form, just upload it there, save draft. Now, there's a prompt to say support materials. You know, if you don't submit support materials, your application will be ineligible. You can ignore that because the support materials are not required for Creative Schools. So you don't need to worry about that at all. And if you do upload any support materials, just bear in mind that they won't actually be assessed because they're not part of the fund. So once you're happy that you've uploaded your final version, just click save, save drafts at the bottom of the page, and that's pretty much it. You just need to go to stage 4. It's really important because a lot of times people often forget they upload the application form and they think it's submitted when it's not. So really important that you actually go to stage 4 and submit your application form. And you'll then receive an automated emails to say, you know, we've received your application form. And that's it. It's those 4 stages. And that's the end of it from you. There's no further actions required from you at that point. So that's it in a nutshell. It's those 4 stages, but just to say again, register as soon as possible and just kind of get in and have a look at the application form to demystify it for yourself. It'll put your mind at ease, I think. So register and then just go in and do it well in advance is the advice. But I'll pass you over to Sarah, who'll go through, briefly go through the assessment criteria, which you can see here, and just some general tips on applying. That's it.
Thanks, Natalie. I won't keep you as much longer, everyone. So the assessment criteria, basically, these are the 4 points on what the assessors will be critiquing your application forms on. So number 1 would be benefits of learning and development. 2 is capacity for participation. 3 is voice of children and young people. And then 4 is the range of school types. So you can access more detail on these in the guidelines. I think it's 3.3 is the section. You'll be able to access them on the website, but I'll send you the link for anything that we need or that we went over today anyway. So yeah, if you want more information on that, just go to the guidelines and you can have a read of it there. And then just general advice from this section. So just as Natalie had said, just allow yourself plenty of time to register, complete and submit your application through OLS. Ensure you read the guidelines and application form thoroughly. Like, you know, have a good read of it before you start filling it out, because it actually will make it easier for yourselves if you kind of understand the questions that are being asked. But it is fairly straightforward. Like, there's no trick questions or anything. Like, it is just getting an idea of like what your school is about. And then when you are writing the application, just make sure it's clear, concise and unambiguous. So it's not just a Creative Schools team that actually assess your application. We do have assessors outside the corporation just to make it fairer for everybody. So just the more clearer it is, the easier it is for everyone to read it, to agree, and get yourself a high score on your application form. And then relate your proposal back to the priorities and criteria for the assessment of application. So that's obviously going back to the guidelines again, just make sure you're clear on what they say. Reread your application before you submit it. Sorry, there's just someone waiting to get in here. I'll let them in. So yeah, we don't, obviously that's obvious to yourselves to reread the application, but we always say maybe give it to someone else in your school, maybe another teacher, maybe the principal. They might read something that you didn't spot, and they'll be able to help you out and just make it more clear. And then submit your application early so as to avoid any issues, ideally 48 hours before. So yeah, basically we have like over a month now, the deadline's been extended. So although you have until that day, the 10th of June to get it in, you're just better off getting it in early just to avoid any hassle really. On account of large volume of applicants, we cannot guarantee that we can resolve any technical issues you may have if you contact us on the day of the deadline. Please allow plenty of time to submit through OLS, that's online services, prior to the 5:30 deadline. So we actually don't have any control over the online system, online services system. So basically that's going to shut down at 5:30, and we can't accept any applications after that. We can't get into it, it just shuts down itself. So just make sure you definitely have it in before the 5:30 deadline. And then also if there is some issues with your OLS, just make sure you don't email us in the application. I know that happens sometimes, and people kind of worry and they email us the application, but we also can't accept it over an email. So it does actually have to go through the online services system for us to accept it. And you can go on, Katrin.
Thanks.
And then just the key dates are, so as I said, the 10th of June, that's the deadline. We can't accept anything after that at 5:30. And then August is when you'll be notified of the results. So either if you're successful or unsuccessful, we will send you an email letting you know your results. And then September, just when you begin school of the academic year, we also begin Creative Schools. So you'll be hearing from us in September then to start off, and then you'll be getting your Creative Associate. So just for further information and inquiries, the application guidelines and the frequently asked questions, you can get them on the Schools Opportunities page. I'll send you the link for this and all the other links as well. That's just really handy. There's loads of information on the website, so that'll give you, if you have like still more questions after today and you don't ask us in the chat box, I can email you back anyway there. And then for any technical questions, if you email online services, like the Creative Schools team will help you, but they'd be much better. The team is great over there with techie stuff, so they'll help you anything with technical questions. And then about Creative Schools itself, just if you're still wondering like what we're about, if you want to just go to the Creative Schools page on our Arts Council website, there's workshops, I think as Katrin said earlier, workshops, presentations, and there's loads of information there. And then also just general inquiries, if you can't find it on the website, you can just write to creativeschools@artscouncil.ie. And then also that link there at the bottom, that's Hug na Nog. I know Katrin briefly went over that. They're our partners. You'll also get information about the children and young people's participation in decision making, which is really interesting.